fearful avoidants can be really open in some ways, but a lot of times they really hold things back, especially in their romantic relationships, because they often feel pressured to uphold this sort of air of perfection and not being too vulnerable, not being too weak, even though vulnerability is definitely a courageous thing, not a weak thing. But of course, that's not necessarily their conditioning. So in today's video, I'm going to break down these 6 most frequent things I would hear from fearful avoidants about their own internal world when it came to them diving into sessions and going deep into some of these things and really sharing that internal world, and specifically things that they would share in counseling or coaching, but not share in actual relationship dynamics because they often felt too vulnerable at the beginning until they did the work to become more secure. And some of these things may really surprise you. So stay tuned. So the first thing is generally fearful avoidants would say to me all the time when they would start dating somebody and start developing stronger feelings for somebody, they would say, well, everybody leaves eventually anyways, or their feelings change. And so fearful avoidants often had this sort of dilemma where they felt like, in their personal experience, maybe right now everything was good, but how could they ever know that somebody's feelings weren't going to change if they got married and settled down? Because so much can change over the course of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And I would hear this storyline from fearful avoidance all the time. And honestly, when I was a fearful avoidant, I had the same storyline. I also experienced that personally. I would be like, well, how can I possibly know that things aren't going to change and become unpredictable as time went on? And I also definitely believed that things always got harder as time went on. When, like, in reality, as you become more secure, things sort of feel the opposite. They feel like things get easier and like more connected and just more healthy and like deep rooted as time goes on in a good way. Like the roots of the relationship go deeper, if that makes sense. Now, number 2, fearful avoidance would also believe everybody will betray me eventually. So even if fearful avoidance felt like in front of them, they had a trustworthy partner, it's almost like they wouldn't trust the partner to the corrupt world around them. I would often hear things like that, like, yeah, my partner's in a good space now, but it's because we're in a good space. And when things change, or if they go through a hard time, or if I go through a hard time, you just can't predict everything. And so eventually everybody's going to betray you at some point. And so why would you even invest in a relationship long term? And I think because fearful avoidants tend to carry these deep rooted feelings of like, oh, I'm eventually going to get lied to in a big way, betrayed in a really big way, abandoned, people's feelings will change. Fearful avoidants, as a result, often experience this very strange dynamic when they develop really deep feelings for somebody. And I've experienced this myself when I was fearful avoidant, which is it's almost like falling in love is this bittersweet process. There's like the sweetness of like developing care and developing feelings and how great that feels. But there's this bitterness that, like, well, the more I care for you, the more you're inevitably going to hurt me. And it starts to put fearful avoidance into this very strong push-pull dynamic. And this brings me to point number 3, which is that then fearful avoidance feel like they flip-flop nonstop. And again, I can tell you from personal experience, when I was a fearful avoidant attachment style, it would feel like on like a daily basis, I would be like, this is the greatest relationship. And then the next day I'd be like, am I making the right decision? And I would go so often, so frequently back and forth in my mind about like worrying about the future and how can I even like know this is the right decision? And what if I'm trapped in the future? And all these like fears. And then when the next day I'd be like, oh, everything's amazing. And there would be this dynamic of constantly questioning things, constantly being like, should I stay or should I go? Should I go now before I get hurt too much in the future? And there's this internal struggle between these two aspects of myself, the part that wanted this healthy, secure relationship, and the part that felt like, well, the healthier it is and the better it is, the more it's going to hurt me long term because I just can't trust the future. And so it's rooted in usually feeling like you couldn't trust your environment growing up, and having deeper roots there, or being hurt or burned from past relationships in various ways. As all of you know, if you've been watching this channel, that's usually the conditioning of a fearful avoidant is they go through chaos, they go through polarities and extremes. And so as a result of this, they project that conditioning and they see through that lens of experiencing all or nothing, really good days with caregivers and really hard days, and sort of these two extremes. They go back and forth in that in their mind and essentially project that onto their partner. And this leads to that, like, should I stay or should I go line of thinking. Number 4, here's a really surprising one. I can't, we talked about how we couldn't trust other people in the future. I used to think, well, I can't trust myself in the future. How do I know my feelings won't change in the future? How could I possibly sustain real feelings for somebody for so long? And again, it's so interesting now to be on the other side of it and like, you know, to feel like there's just such a certainty around things and such a like peace and calm around things that I had never experienced before. And honestly, I'll tell anybody because this would have helped me so much when I was fearful avoidant to have context. What I did not know when I was fearful avoidant is that relationships have stages. So you start in your dating stage, you move into the honeymoon stage, and then you go into the power struggle stage. And once you make it out of the power struggle stage, you get into the stability, commitment, and bliss stage. And the bliss stage is sort of like the honeymoon stage, but like you deeply know somebody. Because to get out of the power struggle stage, you had to know each other's fears and wounds and needs and standards. And you had to have talked these things through so that you know how to properly take each other into consideration and navigate the relationship together in really healthy ways. And doing that builds such deep roots in a relationship and moves a relationship so much more from conditionally based love, like infatuation based love you have in the dating and honeymoon stage, into much deeper, more considerate, more caring, thoughtful, insightful love and care and connection. And there's such a stability that comes with that. And there really is a depth that comes with that too. And, for me, when I was fearful avoidant, I would just, every relationship was like dating, honeymoon, power struggle, breakup, dating, honeymoon, power struggle, breakup. So I would always end up in a situation where I just felt like, well, my own feelings change. And so how do I know that my own feelings are going to stay for somebody in that same way without feeling resentful or hurt over time or so disconnected and misunderstood? And so there would be this dynamic of like going through that cycle, not realizing that there's something so beyond that. And it does require doing the work, right? It does require like getting deeper into a relationship, knowing how to communicate, being okay with vulnerability, knowing how to work through things and navigate conflicts together. The analogy I often give to people about this is it's like going from, you plant a tree and it's like a little sapling and maybe you have to put one of those little fences around it in the winter time to keep it okay, or in a windstorm, it doesn't just like fall over or get ripped out of the ground because it's so fresh and so young. And then as you keep nourishing it and watering it and it gets sunlight and proper soil, well, then it builds deeper and deeper roots and it gets bigger and stronger. And eventually you don't need a fence around it. A huge windstorm can come and nothing's going to take that tree down. And that's sort of what happens after you exit the power struggle stage of a relationship and really move into stability and commitment, but eventually the bliss phase is you feel that sense of like strength and depth and like certainty in it because it's a big, tall, strong tree and it's been watered and nourished and nurtured and it's going to keep its roots deep and it's going to survive things and there's not a worrying around it that you might have experienced earlier. So I just hope that's helpful to share. We still have a couple more points here. But by the way, before I tell you the other two major things here that I would hear from fearful avoidance, I also want to let you know if you want help and support and just like becoming secure in a relationship and what that looks like and what a secure relationship looks like and how you get to the bliss stage, you can check out our 7-day free trial to PDS. It really gives you access to like all of our courses. But just for this month, just for a limited time during this month, you actually get to keep for life. So it's like a free course. You get to keep for life the key pillars to a secure relationship course for free. So you literally get access to it and it talks to you all about the key pillars of a secure relationship, what that bliss stage looks like, how to reverse engineer the steps to get there. And again, you literally get to keep it for life. So you can check it out. And hopefully that's just helpful or supportive too if you are somebody who grew up and just didn't really know what that's supposed to look like or how to arrive there. We also talk about how to exactly reverse engineer the steps. Okay, the next one, number 5 here is I feel like I will lose myself in relationships. So a lot of fearful avoidance, because they're quite enmeshed, they tend to take on the feelings and emotions and responsibilities of the other person. And they usually feel like the moment they really attach to somebody, because they don't know how to have good, healthy boundaries in close relationships and carve out what those boundaries are, and often don't know how to communicate their needs, they just feel engulfed by a relationship. They're like, I just have to show up how this person expects me to, and I have to, every date or every time I spend with them has to be the best date ever or the best phone conversation ever. And there's all this pressure they put on themselves. And so oftentimes they feel like when they get into a relationship, they lose themselves in the process. And so they have this trapped wound come up. And again, can cause that flip-flopping or be a contributing factor to it. And then last but not least, this idea that people in relationships take advantage of me. Okay. So a lot of fearful avoidance is often your shadow because you're often taking advantage of yourself to please others. And so you end up in a dynamic where you're constantly giving of yourself at your own expense. And because of that, because you feel like people, because you don't share your boundaries, state what they are, stop people from taking advantage, put all this pressure and expectation on yourself. Not only do you feel taken advantage of, but also trapped. That changes with healthy boundaries and actually being able to open up and share what you need from people as well, instead of only putting all of that pressure on yourself to meet everybody else's needs. Okay, so really important work to get into. So that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the free course giveaways we do from time to time and all the daily video content that we put out here. That is it for today. Thank you so much for stopping by and for watching, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.